That's actually not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about bone markings. And when students are studying anatomy, there's a whole slew of bones that they need to know, but then there's all these pointers, these parts of the bones that are incredibly important. So this is what I want to do. Brief video on bone markings. If I have time, I'll go ahead and add in, I'll show some real bones and show some pictures and things like that. So, all right. Brought to you by Curious Marineland. Now, when you think about bone markings, you should think about not just the bone, but there's landmarks, there's features, all right? So what we say projections, you have to attach something to a bone, like a tendon, or bones have to attach to other ones. We call that articulation points. There's depressions and grooves and openings. This is going to allow for a blood vessel to lay in it, or a tendon to lay in something, or a blood vessel to go all the way through it, like you need an actual hole for that to go through, and nerves as well. So this was our old textbook. Just kind of skim through this. Then I'm going to go into our current textbook and show you some examples. Actually, let's do this first. So take a look at all this. This is a skull. This is a scapula. You have lines. You have this meatus, a process, a condyle, fossa, like a little depression, a foramen, that's an opening. You have alveolus, sinuses, crest. There's a whole slew of terms. Fovea, the head of the bone, the neck of the bone, which you don't see in this picture, but crest, lines, epicondyles, condyles, these little circular surfaces here. All right, there's the head there. Tubercles, tuberosities, and so there's a lot to see there, other than just saying, hey, that's the humerus bone. Well, there's stuff that's going on there. So let's dive into this in a little more details. So think about this. These projections, like muscle and attachments, that's one thing. Okay. Then you have these areas that help protect the joints, and then you have these depressions, ovals, openings that allow blood vessels and nerves to pass through, and that's where you get like a meatus versus a sinus, a fossa, a groove, a fissure, a foramen or foramina. And here's an example of a tuberosity, trochanters. All right, so let's kind of break down what they all do here. All right, here's a a medial view. And you see a sinus and you see a meatus. All right, this whole thing is called the orbit, but within it is something called a fissure. It's like a slit. So let's go back to this. So this is the current textbook that my students use. So let's look at this. They give you, all right, so it says an elevation or projection, and that's either called a process or a ramus. And what is it? It's like a projection or a bump on a bone. You got to have something to attach to, like a muscle might attach to it. All right, so you'll have tendons. Some examples of those are the trochanters, the tuberosities, tubercles, a crest, a line, a spine. And when we get over here, here's another category, forming articulations with adjacent bones. So like the head of a bone, or the neck, the condyle, trochleus, facets. And then you also have depressions called fossa or sulcus. Let's look at this. All right, so a foramen is basically a round passageway. A canal is like a duct. A meatus is a passageway through, but it's not a complete circle, or it's not like a straight-on line for the tube. We'll get into that. A fissure, this is like a cleft or a slit. It's also an attachment point. Your skulls, you have longitudinal fissures, and well, actually that's sutures. Forget I said that. So this slit right here, that's actually the eyes here, and then the optic nerve is going to go back into that. So a sinus is going to be a chamber within a bone. Is normally filled with air. And so let's do this. This is a little deeper now. All right. So I could go on, but this is from a really good reference book. Let's look at the feature, the location, and that. And I'm just going to randomly pick some, and then, like for example, the mandibular condyle. I'm going to show that on the mandibular fossa. The condyle is on one bone. The mandibular fossa is on another. But these two interact, they articulate. So this is a depression with a mandible articulates with the skull. All right. process, the temporal process. Temporal bone has a mastoid process, and it says enlargement. And basically, if you're one of my students, this whole PowerPoint is on Blackboard, so you can check that out. The occipital condyle. So there's a lot in there. And let's go to here. Let's look at, these are all the fissures and canals within the skull. Right? For example, the Foramen Magnum. Everyone knows the Foramen Magnum. That's the found in the occipital bone. That's where the spinal cord is going to go through. The Foramen Ovale. That's found in the sphenoid, and it's called the mandibular division. So of the trigeminal nerve. That's one of your nerve, cranial nerve 5. And you can see there's a lot more here than I've had my students know. But like the mental foramen, that's in the mandible. That's the mental nerve again. Nasolacrimal canal, that's when your tear duct. So let's look here and see some. So we'll go here and add some tabs here. For example, this is the Foramen Ovale. If you click that, you'll see that's a vessel, an oval. There's a blood vessel, not a blood vessel, a nerve that's going to go through there, the trigeminal nerve, cranial nerve 5. All right, and let's see. Let's find our. It's right here. I'll find this one. Oh, the meatus. This is the internal acoustic meatus. There's an external in the temporal bone that where you see it from the outside. You'd need a lateral view for that. And we got the ovale. Let's find a couple other vessels that we can pick through. The jugular foramen. All right. So this is going to be your jugular vein is going to be coming. Actually, the vein is going to be going back to the heart. So imagine all the blood vessels from the brain are going to be dumping into the jugular, and they're going to be going down the superior vena cava down to the heart. Okay, the right atrium, that is. All right, I think we should see if we can find a couple more structures, and let's look at more than the skull. Let's dig into some of the other ones. Let's see. I think we've got. In that case, I should probably find, let's find a humerus. There you go. Now, you got to know the humerus, but then there's structures here. For example, there's the humerus bone. You've got the surgical neck. You got and then right here, you have the deltoid tuberosity. So a tuberosity is going to be an attachment point. So the deltoid bone is covering, and its tendon is going to insert right here. It's going to originate here, and it's going to insert right here. So let's look at this one. This is an interesting one. I should have gone back to the humerus, and I would have shown you something called the olecranon fossa. And that's where this structure here, the olecranon process is going to attach. I need a different view here. Right, it's not going to show up there, but this will insert with the humerus. Right, so if you look here, this is that's the fossa. The olecranon process is going to hook into there. So, all right. Now, what I want to do now is actually go and show some of the actual bones. So I'm going to just reposition this. All right, we are back. So if I go back to my PowerPoint, okay. Let's Let's point out where we saw like the Foramen Magnum, the Ovale, and I'm going to point out some other structures like the jugular foramen. I'll look at some articulating facets, and we'll just kind of close with this. All right. So I mentioned the Foramen Ovale. All right. So we're right here. All right. The jugular, probably see it from here. So these are foramen, okay? Let's talk about some of the other structures. Let's talk about a condyle. So this is, right here, this is the mandibular condyle. It's on the mandible bone. But it articulates with a facet or a fossa. This is the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. There's a mastoid process. Earlier I showed you the internal acoustic meatus, which you can't really see, but you can see the external acoustic meatus. All right, so processes, let's see, some other structures I should kind of mention. All right, let's talk about the fissure. Okay, so this is a fissure. It's like a slit. This is the superior orbital fissure. This would be the inferior. Okay, and I think I'm kind of running out of things to show you with that one, so I should probably show you here. See, you got structures like a tubercle. There's the head. You know, the neck. All right. This is the part I was trying to show you. This is the olecranon fossa. This right here is the process that's going to insert with that. All right. So let's run through a couple more things. I mentioned facets. Let's think about that. That's an articulating point. Now, a lot of times these are named to help you understand how they function. For example, if you look in here, now I'm going to show, this is lumbar vertebrae, but I'll show you, there's a part here, there's a part here, and a part here. So this part right here is this inferior part, right? This is the superior right of the bone right below it. Superior, inferior, if you want to say that. So this is a superior articulating facet. This is a inferior articulating facet. So this is just another bone. It's called the superior articulating facet, right? The facet is a little depression that allows for these bones to attach to each other. All right. So let's kind of wrap up. We've been talking about bone markings. All right. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and see what we have here. And what else do I want to mention here? So just to go through, look at the picture, that probably will be easier to see some of these rather than moving all the bones. So I mentioned the foramen ovale. I mentioned there's the carotid canal, so that's where the carotid artery is going to be going through. This right here, there's a condyle there. There's a mastoid process. What do these do? Let's go back to these bones here and see what they tell us. Let's go back to the skull and just kind of wrap this video up here. All right, so we had our tags. So this right here, mastoid process, if you look over here, it's going to tell you, what this attachment, so it's an attachment point for these are two muscles. So there's a muscle that's going to attach here. All right, there's obviously this is the biggie, the foramen magnum where the spinal cord goes through. All right, so that's kind of our look at different processes, projections that we call bone markings. All right, and you can just see these are just some different looks. So every one of these, a student ought to be able to recognize the bone, but then the parts, these parts are attachment points. They're either a hole to go through for a vessel. They are a point to attach to another bone or have a muscle attached to it. That's really what we're looking at. Just kind of finish up with this. These are really the ones that we're looking at. If you need to pause the video, go and take a look at that. The trochanter is one that's often mentioned because it's a big attachment point and it's only found in the femur, and this would attach your glute muscles to your body. So, all right, brought to you by Curious Man there. All right, thanks for watching.